In 1397, a wool merchant's son opened a bank in Florence. 100 years later, his descendants owned the Pope. Literally. 2 of them became Pope. 3 married into royal families. 1 became Queen of France. They financed the Sistine Chapel, funded Leonardo da Vinci, bankrolled Michelangelo. Everything you think of when you think of the Renaissance, one family paid for it. But here's what they don't teach you in art history. The Medicis didn't become powerful because they were rich. They became rich because they invented something, the financial system you use today. Like Finny says, the Renaissance wasn't paid for with passion, it was paid for with compound interest. Welcome to Finny Chronicles, where history meets money, power meets consequence, and every story is a warning somebody ignored. Florence, 1360. Forget the postcards. This is a city that smells like wet wool and ambition. 50,000 people crammed inside medieval walls, everyone hustling, everyone counting. Florentine bankers finance wars from England to Jerusalem. Florentine cloth sells from Cairo to Constantinople. The 2 biggest banks in Florence lend a fortune to the King of England. He uses it to fight France. Then he says 4 words that destroy them both. I'm not paying. Both banks fail. Thousands ruined. Like Finny says, Florence in 1360 smelled like sheep, traded like sharks. But one man watches the Bardi burn and learns one lesson. Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici. Never bet the bank on a crown. Kings have armies. You have ledgers. Giovanni starts as an apprentice at his uncle's modest bank in Rome, learns the trade, watches, waits. In 1397, at age 37, he opens his own bank. Nothing fancy, no grand ambitions on display, but Giovanni has a different customer in mind. Not kings, the church. The Medicis turned a pope's money problem into the foundation of modern banking. That story's next. If you want the full timeline of how money built and destroyed empires, hit subscribe. Now, back to Florence. The early 1400s. The Catholic Church is the most powerful institution on earth. It collects taxes from every parish, owns land in every kingdom. But it has a problem. All that money is scattered across a continent. How does a bishop in Spain pay taxes to Rome? He needs a banker. A bishop in Barcelona hands gold to a Medici clerk. He walks into Rome weeks later with just a piece of paper and walks out with the same gold. The Medicis take a cut on both ends, money traveling without moving. But here's the genius. Charging interest on loans is a mortal sin. The church has banned it for centuries. Giovanni doesn't charge interest. That's a sin. He charges for foreign exchange services. Same math, different confession. Like Finny says, the best financial innovations aren't new products. They're new names for old sins. By 1420, Giovanni is the papal banker. Every tithe from every church in Europe passes through Medici hands. The money doesn't sit still. Giovanni reinvests wool, silk, alum for dyeing cloth, a vertically integrated financial empire, 2 centuries before anyone had a name for it. In 1429, Giovanni dies. His last advice to his sons? Stay out of the public eye. His son Cosimo hears him and promptly ignores every word. Cosimo de' Medici takes over the bank in 1429. He inherits the most profitable bank in Europe, but Cosimo wants something his father never did: power. Florence is a republic, theoretically. In reality, a few wealthy families control everything, and the Medicis are new money. The old families look down on them. Cosimo doesn't fight, he spends. Hospitals, churches, artists. Every time Florence needs something beautiful, Cosimo signs the check. When Brunelleschi needs funding to finish the dome of Florence Cathedral, the largest dome since ancient Rome, Cosimo pays. The old families call him vulgar. The people call him generous. Cosimo calls it strategy. Like Finny says, Cosimo invented the humble brag. He just did it with cathedrals. But not everyone is charmed. In 1433, the Albizzi family has Cosimo arrested. The charge, trying to make himself too powerful, basically being too successful. He's exiled to Venice. It should be the end. In Venice, Cosimo doesn't sulk. He networks, he lends, he waits. And back in Florence, something strange happens. Projects stop. Churches go unfinished. The economy stutters. Turns out the city ran on Medici money, and nobody noticed until it stopped. 1 year later, Cosimo returns in triumph. The Albizzi are exiled instead. For the next 30 years, Cosimo never takes formal office, never calls himself a ruler, but he controls every election, appoints every committee, shapes every policy. The Medici Bank expands to London, Bruges, Geneva, and Lyon. At its peak, more wealth than any private institution in European history. And the art? Every masterpiece from the early Renaissance, the Medicis paid for it. When Cosimo dies in 1464, Florence awards him the title Pater Patriale, father of the country, a wool merchant's grandson, ruling without a crown. Like Finny says, Cosimo proved you don't need a title to be king, you just need the bank accounts of everyone who does.
Cosimo's grandson Lorenzo takes power in 1469. They call him the Magnificent, and honestly, he earns it. Under Lorenzo, the Renaissance reaches its height. Michelangelo lives in the Medici palace, Botticelli is on permanent retainer, Leonardo sketches in Medici gardens. Lorenzo doesn't just fund art, he creates it, writes poetry, studies philosophy, hosts the greatest minds of the age. But there's a problem. Lorenzo doesn't really care about the bank. His managers make risky loans. The Indus wool trade collapses. The Bruges branch fails. London struggles. And Lorenzo starts raiding the bank. Personal expenses, political bribes, family survival. The line between company money and family money, Lorenzo erases it completely. Like Finny says, Lorenzo proved that being magnificent and being solvent are two very different achievements. Then comes 1478. Easter Sunday. The priest raises the host, and assassins draw daggers in the house of God. Giuliano is stabbed 19 times. He dies on the marble floor, blood pooling beneath the altar. Lorenzo barely escapes, barricading himself in the sacristy, bleeding from a neck wound. Florence erupts. The mob hunts the conspirators. Bodies are hung from windows. The Pope, who backed the conspiracy, declares war on Florence. Lorenzo responds with a gamble. He travels personally to Naples, to the court of the king allied against him, unarmed, vulnerable, relying on nothing but charm. He comes back with a peace treaty. His reputation as the Magnificent is cemented, but the bank continues to die in the shadows. Lorenzo dies in 1492, the same year Columbus sails for America. His son, Piero, proves incompetent. When the French invade in 1494, the Medicis are exiled. The bank, the source of all their power, collapses entirely. A mob loots the Medici palace, centuries of art scattered. A fiery preacher named Savonarola takes over. He burns paintings, books, mirrors, everything the Medicis represented. Like Finny says, every fortune thinks it's permanent. The Medicis learned legacies are just loans with longer terms. But the story doesn't end there. 2 popes, 2 queens of France, Grand Dukes of Tuscany, the family that lost everything ended up owning more than they started with. But the bank that built it all, long gone. What remains is the art. The Medici's art collection became the Uffizi Gallery, still one of the greatest museums in the world. Every painting, every sculpture, paid for with Florin profits. Branch banking, holding companies, letters of credit, political finance. Like Finny says, the Medicis invented the game. We just added computers. Florence today is a museum of Medici money. Every tourist photographing the David, every student studying Botticelli, every architect admiring the dome. They're all looking at financial engineering, profits converted into permanence. The real question is, what are we building? Today's billionaires talk about legacy, but most of what they build is digital, ephemeral. Will anyone visit an Amazon warehouse in 500 years? The Medicis understood something we've forgotten. Money buys power. Power buys influence, but only art buys immortality. The Medicis figured that out 600 years ago. Giovanni de' Bicci started with a counting house and a few florins. His family ended up owning the Renaissance, but also losing everything. Twice, being exiled, being hunted, watching the bank collapse. Both are true. The fortune and the fall, inseparable. Like Finny says, the Medicis built a fortune, lost it, and still won. Because they knew the secret. Wealth fades, but the things wealth builds, those can last forever. One family, 2 centuries, a fortune that rose, collapsed, and left behind the Renaissance. If this changed how you see money and legacy, hit subscribe. We drop videos like this every few days. Real stories about the people who built fortunes, lost empires, and shaped the world we live in. Drop a comment. If you had a fortune to burn, what would you build that lasts? Watch next, the 48-hour countdown that ends empires, from 1907 to Lehman Brothers. Same pattern. 3 centuries, the margin calls that broke the world. See you there.